Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. So today is not going to be an action video. I want to talk about something that has struck me, and I think I may have talked about this before, but it is kata in context. What I mean by that, as we look at videos of karate online, typically what comes into our feed from Okinawan karate are performances of kata. If you paid a lot of money to travel to Okinawa and train with a master, you would probably end up doing 99% basics and kata. And they would fuss about the details of whether my hips are tucked, or my leg is straight, or my feet are two body widths, or one body width, or one shoulder length apart. And they would fuss about the position of the hand and all of those kinds of details. Okay, great if you're within that organization and system and you want to just learn kata. But way back, when people just fought, and in the early days of martial arts, the drills were teacher with a student or teacher and two students against each other. You would work on drills and grapples and holds and going back and forth. And then the kata would be taught as a way to remember the body positions of those drills. Where exactly kata or forms came in the martial arts is disputable, debatable. Obviously, the Chinese had it before the Okinawans, so somewhere pre-Okinawan karate, and that may be one of the things that in the 1600s sort of came into Okinawa tea or karate. So the influence of a form as a way of remembering, as a learning or memory mnemonic for techniques, probably 1600s, at least as far as we know, Sanchin and Seisan being the two oldest. But going back to the concept, we get these videos online and we see the Okinawans doing kata, occasionally doing partner drills. Very, very, very seldom do we see from Okinawan dojos free sparring or even situation defense application processes. Occasionally that'll happen, but very, very rarely from the Okinawan side. From the Japanese side, we'll see kata done as a performance. A lot of overt power, a lot of show of strength and hold and posed techniques, which is very different than going back and watching Hohan Soken, for example, or Zendro Shimabukuro, or some of the older Chotoku Kian, the older guys performing kata. Very different than how the Japanese overt power. And I still remember on my Rokudan test back in 2004 that one of the comments I received was they were surprised that I was putting so much overt power rather than more subtlety of body movements to create the power. Not as pretty to watch, but very effective for the in-close fighting that is Okinawan karate. So when you kata, how do you kata? Do you do it for performance? Now it's fun to watch. For example, Ron Nix does a lot of demonstrations and performances, and he's developed this persona of how to do a kata. Huge, giant show movements, very cinematic, very theatrical. When he does them just himself, he doesn't always do it that way. Ron's old kata still are in him, but he's done a lot of demo kata. So there is a difference that we need to recognize. In a lesson that I watched with Higaona, Morio Higaona sensei, he said, when practice big, when apply small. And I've mentioned this concept many times. But what's missing to me as I watch karate online is always that gap between kata and the occasional drill to, okay, what does it look like when it comes into the messy reality of public violence? And that's what I'm trying to do with some of these more recent videos that I'm doing, is the extension of the template of the kata version and then transitioning into the messy, hey, there's the self-defense version. When you watch an MMA fight, for example, or YouTube videos of public acts of violence, it's messy. Regardless of who wins or loses, there's no beautiful stance and picture. There's a guy currently who's doing a lot to, I think, put the reality of Okinawan karate on video, where he'll show an MMA move and then show how it came out of Naihanchi or whatever. So taking it from the choreographed pretty to the kata, to the overt Japanese, to the more subtle Okinawan versions, how do you kata? The most important thing to me is not the kata itself, but what the kata means and teaches. So yes, I do need to have proper physical body alignment for my positions in the kata, but even more so, I need to know why those positions translate into the mess that is real combat. And so I really appreciate this one guy who was talking about, or who shows the contrast, or the similarity of the karate movements into the combat environment, even though it's usually the competitive combat environment. But that's as close as we can get to safely practicing the full speed mess that is self-defense. When you kata, do you focus on the beauty, the health, the structure? We talk a lot about posture and alignment, and those things are important, but if I'm fighting a boxer, there's got to be more bob and weave, a little bit more free flow of the movement, and this kind of thing we don't see in kata because we focus very much on posture. Well, you have to have the center before you can have anything around the center, right? You get cotton candy, you got the little stick, and then the sugar starts to flow around it. Without the stick, it's just mush in a barrel. We have to have that center first, but we also need to realize that some of these movement evasives are there. So my challenge in doing the latest videos that I'm doing is to make that connection, as I tried to teach in my seminar on Okinawa just recently, and see the reality of the mess of combat. Interestingly, just before recording this today, Michael Calandra Sensei of Ishinryu was talking about the comments he gets about kata, that he's not posing enough or that he's going too fast. And there's an old video of Nick Adler Sensei, also of Ishinryu, interestingly, where he was talking about if we did Seisan with the poses, okay, but in real life it's going to be, and it's not pretty, and it is short, and it's not the big full movements, it's short movements in the reality of hitting faster and being more combative. So we need to make that connection if we are teaching karate as self-defense. If you're teaching karate as sport, if you're teaching karate as health and fitness and exercise, if you're teaching karate as culture, if you're teaching karate as meditation, all of those valid and fine. But if you're teaching karate as self-defense, we need to extrapolate the movements of the kata and put them into a messy sort of a situation. So that's my goal with the recent videos that I've been doing and will continue to attempt to do. It's hard to kind of teach and talk through the same time and be able to do it at full speed, but hopefully you're getting the concepts there. So my question for you is, how do you kata? Do you kata for pretty? Do you kata for tournament? Do you kata for demonstration purposes theatrically? Do you kata for self-defense? When you practice, how do you distinguish between those practices if you do any more than one of those versions? How do you distinguish in your practice? And what do you do if you're teaching self-defense? How do you link your kata practice to the mess of combative reality of public violence? Just food for thought. I'm not trying to be pretty, lucky for me, right? Because it wouldn't happen. I'm trying to be effective, powerful, balanced, centered, mobile, and focused on the self-defense applications when I practice kata. Now, sometimes I will slow it down. I'll do it Tai Chi style sometimes, because that helps build the strength and make me very aware of center cover, full pulling motion, complete blocking, full rotation of the hip into the strike, extra rotation of the hip to the knee pressure. And I'll go slowly because it gives me a chance to work on that alignment. But the ultimate goal is to do my kata, I don't want to say messy, that's not a goal, but to do my kata more combatively. Hit hard, punch hard, grab hard, throw hard. How would I do it against a live opponent? That's my thought for today. Share, like, subscribe, comment, complain, etc. But as always, thank you for joining, and until next week, most importantly, let's keep practicing.